a sec.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we are live. So welcome everybody to Server Framework meeting. We don't know exactly the correct name of it, but we are recording just in case. So John, do you have a agenda or something planned to discuss or someone else?
Yeah, I do have a list, and I'm currently writing it part of the document. I just shared the link. I think you should all have access. I do have to remove some
Okay.
just naming on it, but like everything should be good also. Um, I think one of the main topic, and we can still get some information based on what we discussed last time, and also maybe some old issue. Server frameworks,
Let me
which
just load a few things so I can start sharing the screen.
sorry, what did you say?
I can start sharing the screen, so share the thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You
I put the link. I think you should have access to it in the chat. Yeah. I put
okay,
it in the Zoom chat, sorry. Yeah,
right.
good. So I'm just moving. I will create everything after, but yeah. You can all add yourself, extra yes. Okay. Great. So basically 2-3 weeks ago, I think, something around that, we did have a big discussion, like, which was not recording, I think, or recorded, I think, which basically was some big topic about what do we want to do with a web server group. And I think it could be great to see, and also following the discussion we all had during the not confu a few weeks ago, this could be quite interesting to uh, up to check that list and see, like, even if it's only four of us, what do we want to do, especially, and on which part do we want to focus. So I'm just putting the link also in the Zoom chat about the last meeting, and I will add the link here.
Okay.
And for me, I think we do have some good discussion that could be quite interesting to have about like reusing some part of the agenda. So first, do we want to focus that on just a web effort, or is it something that we want to focus around something else for not like, do we want to focus on web framework, or as we discussed last time, we want to have the group a bit more open about multiple parts, which could include, for example, the socket API, which could include multiple parser, HTTP parser, or any other stuff. Like, what would be like the main idea would not to say, hey, we want to do that today where we are only four people, but maybe we can have an action about which discussion do we want to follow until the next time we all meet around that. Like, what for you would be the scope?
The web server, like if we stick on web server frameworks, what we are going to talk about? Libraries like FastFi Express or something else?
Yes and no. So like, and I think because Paolo, you were part of the group also last time when on the first part, the main discussion we had was about one big discussion and topic of discussion was HTTP and how can we try to harmonize for user land, how to have one way for the user to rely on HTTP without the user knowing about HTTP 1, 2, and 3, and basically provide like an abstract layer that would allow everyone to basically generate a server, but this will be mostly automatic, or find better way to optimize HTTP as a whole also.
Yeah.
That was one of the big use case, but yeah, Paulo.
Yeah. No, actually, you summarized pretty well. So basically, this was originally an idea that was I heard from James at NodeConf, and basically following the same approach that is being followed by the IEEE, basically with the new RFC for HTTP, they work from 9110, which is HTTP semantics without specifying the protocol. And then there is 12, 13, and 14, which are HTTP 1, 2, and 3, basically. So in other words, the idea was the user spawns up a server, says, I want an HTTP server. I have no idea whether it's going to be receiving traffic on port 80 for 43, whether it's going to be HTTP 1, 2, and 3, because potentially Node will try to basically start all possible versions that are supported. Of course, if there is no SSL, there is no HTTPS, obviously, and there is no HTTP 2, I guess, and maybe 3, I don't remember about that. But basically, that's the idea, to simplify how the users are actually establishing a multi-protocol HTTP server. That's the core idea. But also one thing that since you asked about the working group, the working group team, whatever we're gonna name ourselves is when we say web, right? Do we implicitly say that web is just HTTP? Because I was thinking that, for instance, it might be, I don't know, SMTP, for instance, just to say, I mean, there are several other protocols which are actually part of the web suite, unless we restrict the web to be World Wide Web, I mean, www, and that's just HTTP. But there are many more protocols which are commonly used in daily activities. So maybe we might want to support or might not. It's just a matter of choosing, basically. But that's something that just came to my mind, honestly.
Yeah,
So
I do agree with that. Like, we should leave the scope quite broad, because like we shouldn't only limit to the HTTP stack, but also, for example, TLS, like all the HTTPS related, and like the S part of other protocols too. And also there is an issue on the GitHub repository of this working group about the cookies API that has been asked for like feature request on what WG. So like and this is inherent to web frameworks. For example, like it's about web, but not specific to HTTP. So I would choose a name for like web framework is probably too specific, because we're not only a web framework, but everything. I would say the scope should be everything from the networking to the web framework, like everything in between, in the sense of connected to exchanging, like stuff on networks and internet related.
No, I do agree, especially we discussed during NodeConf about I don't remember everything of the conversation, but we discussed a bit about, I think DNS was part of the conversation, but also the sub-layer like below HTTP, and how we handle everything from parsing a query or request to processing every other kind of information that is needed before or after you send a request, basically. So this is quite open, and I do agree that web framework is a bit reductor on the scope of the group and everything we want to do, which doesn't mean that we want to do everything or we will be able to do everything at once, but also maybe there is some kind of hierarchy that we will need to, I don't know, to find, or at least to discuss about what would be the key priority for the group on, like, for example, starting to work on, I don't know, HTTP 3, and having at the same time some people working on how do we want to improve the performance for stream or stuff like that. It would be counterproductive to work on both, because maybe some people will, oh, here is a pull request to implement HTTP 3 natively in Node and stuff like that, whereas the other group will be 2 weeks later, hey, this is a new way to handle sub-level stream, which break everything. And that could be, I guess it could be an issue on two parts of the group working on different initiatives that will be basically wasting time maybe not the best word, but wasting time on some people that will provide some work and we will need to redo the same work a few weeks or months later, or like, I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, consider that. I mean, we don't want to lie to ourselves as well. Of course, HTTP is probably the most used protocol, so probably is going to be the priority for us eventually. Might or might not, because as you see, right, there are the cookies API, there are the streams, the web streams which are not performing as the regular node streams. I don't know. There is the I mean, we also spoke about having a compatible API for HTTP. They use just the standard request and response. It's not a top priority, but it's definitely on the wish list. I mean, there are so many stuff to do. To be honest, that's is very hard.
URL parsing is one too,
URL
because
parsing, I mean,
it's standard. It's been standardized by WG and Node.js. HTTP server is not compliant, for
yeah,
example.
yeah. Probably we should summon Yagis and Daniel here for that part, so they can eventually adapt ADA for that probably as well. I mean, or yeah, unless it's already working, I'm not sure about that, but I don't remember, to be honest, the technical details. The thing is that there are so many stuff that I don't know. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's just a name. If
Yeah,
it was
true.
for me, I would pick something like network protocols or something like that, for instance. The thing is that because bear with me on this. At the beginning, I was just thinking about networking group.
Yep.
But I wonder if it doesn't give the false idea that we just care about, I don't know, optimizing TCP and UDP
Yes.
for what you might eventually optimize. And rather, you don't consider that we're actually mostly moving on a higher level. So eventually, at some point, we might get to the new socket API or stuff like that, but it's not our focus. So it's just networking probably is too much limiting here.
Like, I would say that everything that's regarding client and servers, like,
Maybe, yeah. Client server
Yeah.
for a working group. Oh, actually, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Unless
Because
it won't-
like, I guess most of the effort will be around, like, for 99% of the end user, it will be how can I, as an user, I don't know, create a server, answer to some HTTP request or any kind of request. Could be socket, could be HTTP, could be any other kind. But I guess for me, like, less than 1% of people using Node.js will really use what we will be working on if we work on the full stack. Like, mainly no one today really work with Stream if you are not author of an HTTP framework, for example, or if you don't work on specific use case with Node.js. People will be, hey, let me take Fastify Express, APGS, or anything else and create an get endpoint to serve hello world as a JSON output.
Yeah. I mean, consider most of the time people don't even use our APIs directly.
Yeah, true. So do we want a name like, I agree with the network part, but maybe something like server group or I don't know would be, I don't know, maybe more.
That's the tricky part. I also like Marco's idea of client surveys, even though it's horrible for marketing, to be honest. It doesn't sell well. I mean, it's technically right, but it doesn't sell well. You know what I mean,
True,
right?
yeah.
No, but I agree that you got the point of the group, Eddie. That's the thing. And that's I mean, as usual, naming and caching are the most hard part in programming, right? That's the usual thing.
We can delay we can delay the discussion in an issue, but the important part is to define the scope that we want to give to this working group. I think we agree that we just don't want to focus on web servers, web frameworks only, and not also on low level networking only. And we would like to cover the whole, like everything that goes from a request, like the client server, and like the way that we can help the users to have a better developer experience with like, I would say anything that is server related or client related in Node. That could be UDP, could be like, doesn't matter the protocol.
Yep.
The fact is that I was thinking we could scope ourselves with everything that eventually will use a network connection. And then for some reason, just the latest Matteo talk came to my mind when you talk about networkless HTTP. And I say, what the hell? But I mean, but in usually, let's say on a regular basis, I would say everything that eventually will use a socket is under our scope, probably.
Yeah.
That's pretty
But
damn much.
UDP doesn't use a socket, and it's still under our scope. So
in some languages, it's called datagram socket, which is horrible to name it, but I also see your point. Everything
Yeah.
goes over our network. Let's put it like this.
Okay.
Because otherwise, if you talk about client servers, I could even talk about peer-to-peer networking, man. So even client server is gone at some point. I mean, that's a mess. To be honest. But,
let's agree on creating. Like, if we
Yeah.
agree, let's create an issue and let's
Okay,
like.
I will create an issue if you all agree with that, and we can all discuss.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I think under this issue we can discuss, like, we can link some of the suggestion, the ideas, like we put the description, the ideas that came, and like talk about the scope that we want to give, and let's choose a proper name about what we want to call this working group. And if it's a working group or a team, I think it's our team.
So I'm not part of the TSC, but from most of the discussion is team and working group is really if you own some part of the project, like I think you know more than me, like Rafael and Paolo, on what's the difference between team and working group. But like I think it's just a naming stuff than really something that we
it would be team for us because we don't have any responsibility in regard of maintaining parts of the code. So it would be just something team.
What would be the difference between team and working group? The
working group has a responsibility on the area, on the they are owners of something, like releasers, like it's a working group because they have a responsibility of doing releases and fixing something if it doesn't work. But team is like we are right now a security team. It's not like every bug and security is our responsibility. We don't have to go fix it immediately, you know.
No, that works fine because, for instance, if I talk about myself on the HTTP side, while I'm the only maintainer of LHTTP, so I can ideally be the working group for LHTTP. I will never do that, just ask if you're asking. But for HTTP, for instance, me and James were present last time. But for instance, Robert, Nagy, Matteo are not here, so it's like most of the people most active on the HTTP part. So it's very hard to claim that we are the working group for HTTP, especially.
No, we're a team.
Yeah, just a team works absolutely great.
But that raises a good question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go for it, John.
Okay. So as you are the only one like really working on this, on almost every HTTP parser on a lot, at least, do we want to try to include like also LMHTTP part of the web server something group or whatever the name, just for you also to not be the only one maintaining it and having to maintain it on, because you have been doing that for the past at least 3 or 4 years, I think.
Pretty much, yes. I mean, the idea is that I want to sunset LHTTP, but it's going to be a long task. First of all, I have to have Milo completely working, included into Node, be part of eventually couple of major, the default for a couple of major releases, and then eventually be present in a major, be the default in another major eventually, be the default for a couple of major releases, nobody's complaining, then we can eventually sunset LLHTTP. So I expect LLHTTP not to be removed until 3 years, maybe. So it's going to be a very long task. So, and also surprisingly, I noticed that LLHTTP is used by a lot of external projects, external from Node. For instance, if I'm not mistaken, AIO, so, I mean, it's a tongue twister for me. HTTP Python library is actually using LLHTTP underneath. And I didn't know about it, but apparently they do. It was amazing when I did some breaking changes that they were shocked by how I broke them, because I had no idea they were actually using the software. So these people might want to be involved in this group just to the scope of LLHTTP because they are interested. For instance, in the future, they might not want to switch to Milo, therefore they have to stick with either take maintenance of that or I don't know, honestly. So I might want to ping them eventually. But for instance, in the current state of art, for sure, LHTTP is part of this group, a team.
Yeah.
Sorry, team. For granted.
No, yeah, like I think like this group, this team, sorry. Well, I think we'll alternate between group and team would be hard as well. But I think there is some part of the scope that would be continue to maintaining some specific part of the project, which most of the time don't have a lot of love from the community or a lot of maintainers that can spend time to work on it. Like you are almost the only one working on that. And also work to develop, let's say, the next, I will call that the next gen HTTP thingy around that. Like, because for me, it's hard to say. And there's some part of Node.js that really needs some love. The other day I was discussing with Vladimir about the cluster part for multiple reasons. It's not part of this group, but like cluster is used at least a bit on some part, yet I think it didn't move for the past 5+ years, I guess. So I think also one part of every team or working group would be also to try to guarantee that can we maintain what's working actually with the best like state-of-the-art way of working until we are able to provide a new solution that would improve everything.
Well, actually, you brought up a good point, because the cluster model, which is usually forgotten, it should be probably part of the networking effort. And thinking about it, this cluster model was written when many things here could not be possible. For instance, worker threads, just to name the most easy one. So the cluster is one of the modules that should probably be, I wouldn't say rewritten, but at least go under a deep analysis and say, can we do any better eventually? Maybe not. Maybe not.
But I don't think it's our scope.
Well, the thing is that many times the cluster is, first of all, it involves parallelization. And yeah, I remember that in the past was also used to increase the throughput for network servers. Because, for instance, if one event loop was blocked in one thread, you could use cluster to basically parallelize with many sub-processes.
Oh yeah, you spawn more process and they talk through IPC and that's it.
With the cluster, you do automatically. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is that actually you got the point. Maybe it's a module that is pretty much legacy. I mean, it just works fine, but is not very useful anymore, given the new possibilities. Consider that it's probably one of the oldest module in the standard library.
Yeah, I think at some point it will be just marked as legacy and it will just die there because nobody uses it. But I don't think it's in the scope of this team, like to check maintainability of old modules like cluster.
Not really, but well, it depends. First of all, it depends what is our final scope, for sure. I mean, for what we discussed earlier, maybe not. But if we see that is a module usually highly coupled with, for instance, HTTP, then probably falls under our area of interest. Or maybe not. Maybe we just decide, okay, we evaluated, we don't care, leave it there.
Like a lot of stuff depends on like the proposal and the issues that we receive from our collaborators. Like I don't think among us there is someone who is interested in working with cluster. So if somebody comes at us and asks to do some stuff, then we will evaluate. Like we don't have to be very rigid in what we say. Okay, this is our like the stuff that we will care and the stuff that we will not care about. You know, like
I totally agree.
I think that depends.
Yeah, on this I totally agree, because for instance, let me also open another word. For us, in theory, for the HTTP part, even the compression modules, I don't remember whether it's zip or whatever, might be our area of interest. Because, for instance, gzip, which is using HTTP for response, right?
Broadly.
Yeah, broadly. I mean, all those. I don't remember the module name. I don't know, but actually, I have to look
Yeah,
up. I think
I guess those like this stuff depends on the interest from collaborators. Because if we like, if nobody's interested in broccoli, like people are not going to join the meetup, and there will be no
I agree.
team anymore.
Agree.
Like depends on what we're interested. I think that we all share interest about like web technologies like frameworks, server, HTTP client. So I think we should not close the door, but say that we want to do this. This is the initiative that we want to start with, and then see how it goes. And if someone is very like, we see that there is a lot of like interest in compression algorithms, we go there. If not, they're just gonna be there if some of us wants to work on it.
Yeah, I
But
totally agree.
I think that we want to work on improving HTTP client and server, on standardization on some APIs, fetch, undici. So like this is the kind of stuff that we want to do. So we like let's start with this scope in mind, but be flexible to everything around it.
Yep.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Would agree 100% on that. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, let's say that in the issue, and we'll talk there and see how call ourselves, and then create an agenda. Like this is our first proper meeting, so
Yeah.
we should create in the next week an agenda and say, okay, these are the points that we want to work on, and from then we see how it goes, and people who are interested will join.
We also need a proper calendar, because I was also almost
Yeah.
missing this event, to be honest.
If you could link the PR to add this on the calendar, I think I can approve it and speed up the process.
Okay, yeah, I will send you the link after the meeting. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm also keeping some note for the meeting. So if you see some part that need be added, like feel free to add in it. Okay. Okay. So mostly what will be the scope of the working group, and some specific discussion about some, let's say, how we call that sub-module or specific module that we want to take care. I think, do we have some, and I don't remember every working group or team, but do we have some overlap link? For example, the net module, is it already part of a specific working group or team that work on it? Or is it owned by someone, or is like...
Surprisingly not. That's one also, for instance, for me, is one of the reasons I joined this team, is because as you know, Node is mostly used on the web or networking, and actually the net and HTTP and related modules have really not much love from people for some reason. They are surprisingly out of the radar. And
the reason is because they are fucked up. So and nobody wants to rework, and like we want to rework it, and there isn't that. It has been like HTTP stack needs some love, because it didn't have a lot in the past years. So I think one of the objectives is to take care of that as a team, like take care of HTTP, HTTP2, net, TLS modules. These are surely modules that that we want to take care of. I think, like, let's say these are the ones that we focus primarily, and work on the other ones is optional, but not properly in the scope.
I was just looking at the core modules. URL and query string eventually are one of the few ones that you left out. But I mean, you made your point absolutely fine. No, yes, those the stack is funny at the moment. I don't want to repeat your definition, but let's say funny. So, I mean, I was surprised when I saw that there was no teams or working group actually formalized over this. Because, for instance, if you compare against, I don't know, security, to give it to name just one, is which, I mean, security, of course, is needed, but the difference between the established structures, people's human structures around it is surprising difference. Is very astonishing forever.
Oh, also there is a minor overlap with WinterCG, which is not node related, but also as node inside because it's about web standards. And I think that we could also add web standards as one of our topics because it relates to fetch, for example, and like lots of other stuff that are involved with HTTP and yeah.
I mean, we already have a human overlap in the person of James.
Yeah, James is everywhere.
James is pretty much everywhere. But actually, when I started thinking about this team, I also thought that it's not a casual overlap, it's a purpose overlap. I mean, we should be the point of contact for Node on WinterCG, probably. We have
Yes.
the most knowledge of that, and we can bridge the two initiatives together in order to align Node with web standards. Since in the past, a lot of mistakes have been done, not just by Node, but pretty much everyone went his own direction.
Yeah.
And we have to finish that. It's a mess.
No, that's true. True. Well, true. Yeah, for WinterCG, I think there is James, there is Ethan that is also part of the WinterCG. I'm attending some of them, not always, but when I do have time, it's not conflicting with something else. So I guess it's also great to have multiple people that can basically go back and forth between a specific group in Node.js and the WinterCG as like there will be a lot of exchange around that.
Yeah, because they also have different visions. For instance, James Adenokan brings both at the same time nodes and Cloudflare version about substandards. So, I mean, we have different purpose, different idea, different needs. I mean, that's a huge richness, I would say.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yes. I wanted to say something, I just forgot about it. Sorry, let's go. Yep.
No, I was actually asking, do we have anything else to discuss today? That was
okay. No, so yeah, one of the point I wanted to discuss also, and I'm getting that from the last meeting, is back in the day, like a few years ago, we discussed about working in two different parts also. Not so I'm removing every module, a specific module, but trying to work with two separate group, one that would work on low level core part for Node.js and another part that will be more focused about, let's say, almost user-land interaction. And is it something that we want to focus on? So it will depend also how many people want to be involved in the group and on which part. But I think there is quite a lot of topic and subject here, just HTTP, and we discussed that a bit before when we started the meeting on, do we want to rely and to try to define a new HTTP interface for everything? Like this will be a huge work to be done across everything, especially if we want to have the same interface for HTTP 1, 2, 3, quick, and anything else. But I think that also could be a good win, a great win for everyone to, hey, everything will use the same abstraction layer, and then you can work with that. And even on our side, it will give us more freedom to just be able, hey, HTTP 1 will use this new abstraction layer, and then we have time to work on HTTP 2, HTTP 3, and
yeah, I guess this is more work of specification, like write down specification, think what's the best API. So this is like at the beginning there will be no low levels, be high level stuff, and try to understand how to because it's not an easy problem to have three kind of different versions of HTTP with a clean and nice API. So the first part would be research and API definition. We can create some initiatives to say, okay, like this is the initiative and this is the champion, and you will take care of researching that, so we could create a bunch of initiatives, pick some champions who voluntarily, and then move on with that. When there is a new issue, someone will champion it, and then like this is the way to keep people involved and to have people actually work. And if someone doesn't work with the working group anymore, they can just remove themselves as champion, and someone will take it and move on.
So on this, I want to emphasize that, I mean, since you mentioned about HTTP, for HTTP, the IEEE already gave this thing to us for free, because the way they have restructured the RFC, they have four RFC for HTTP. One is the semantics, which in your definition are basically the high-level API, and then they have the lower level, 1, 2, and 3. So in theory, our job would be to just create a, let's say a module. I mean, bear with me, with module might be just a set of APIs, but let's call it module. A module for the semantics, then a module for HTTP 1, 2, and 3, which is used by the higher level module. And then eventually you also have even a higher level module, because the HTTP semantics will eventually be used by request and response API.
Yep,
exactly.
So we have different layers of abstraction, of course, from the network level. I mean, that's the ISO stack, basically. It's very stupid to say, but that's the idea. Of course, the things that we have to find a mix between people working in a black box manner, saying, I'm working on the semantics, I'm defining this API, I don't want to know how you implement lower level, the semantics. Sorry, how you implement the API that I'm gonna use in this in this module, basically. But on the other side, we cannot work on the black box model. Otherwise, people will have no context of what they're doing. So that's also, we have to find a good balance on this.
And you also have to think that we have also to talk with WinterCG about the standardization of those API. So there are a few areas that we need to cover, and it's not going to be an easy task. But the thing that we have identified a way to work, like it's a good start, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I consider this group to have worked for several years, at least.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It would be
because it's a never-ending thing here.
Yeah, because if we start to think about that, because, okay, let's say we implement HTTP and a specific layer for that and request and response for the end user. It also means that the big question that will follow is, do we want to provide, let's say, part of Node.js or in a module governed by the Node.js group, let's say, about cookies, about session, about everything that would be on top of the pure raw, let's say, exchange. Because currently most of the framework, so you have a big chunk that is part of the Express group with like historically created session, cookies, HTTP and stuff like that. But you have also other frameworks that basically rewrote the same module again for multiple reasons that, and which mean that first, multiple part of the community is doing the same work for something that is a base for every HTTP request, basically, which is also a standard and everything. And also, we cannot guarantee that two modules which do have a really close name are following the spec. So do we also want to provide, maybe not as a first step, but in an end path, hey, if you want to do an HTTP server and an HTTP request from a client or stuff like that, hey, you have NDG for this part, you have fetch for this part, you have Node.js, double dot cookies if you want cookies, double dot session if you want sessions, stuff like that. Is it something that, part or not, of course, like this is another discussion, but is it something that we want to think about being in our scope, even if it's today seen as an external library or not?
The things that my opinion would be that, for instance, you mentioned Express, but for instance, Fastify rewrote the cookie management, for instance, right? Yeah. And I think is a mess. Is a big. I mean, now it makes sense because they didn't have an official API, but once an official API is shared by Node, Dino, Cloudflare, WinterCG, my vision would be that unless you need to use something which is specific to Node. For instance, when you go to the very lower level, some point you have to open this socket, right? So you need to use libuv, net module, whatever, right? But unless you need that, that module, which is, for instance, released by us, could be released by us on NPM. So eventually, if people say, oh, I love the way Node people wrote this thing, I'm going to use the Node cookie within Dino, because it has no specific Node API used internally. That would be my mission. So to be as most agnostic possible for eventually this library to be used on the browser, for instance. Why not on front end? That will also eliminate our need for compatibility issues and so forth, because we use the same library, server and client.
Yeah, this is standardization. This is what I was talking about. So there has to be one part of people talking with WinterCG, and I think it should overlap with this working group too, like the standardization process, so that I would say generally improve the developer experience of the goal is to improve the developer experience of the server and client in all the I don't know how to define, because that would be the name of our working group, but it's an improvement in terms of developer experience that comes also from standardization. And it like I would say that one of the core tasks is overlap with WinterCG and be probably the ones that have some good connection, because right now only James is from Node is inside WinterCG. I go there from time to time, but the problem is that it overlaps with my work on the security team, so I cannot go all the time. So because the meetings are at the same time, so this would be one of the scopes, I would say.
One few things that I want to remark here. One thing that we are also is starting as part of this team. Also, we might start as part of this team is also that first we release stuff which is officially backed by Node, but is not bundled with Node. For instance, let's say we take the node.js organization on NPM, just to give you an idea of what I'm thinking about. But on the other side, what I just mentioned earlier, also go on the other side. For instance, if we see that Dino has written up an amazing cookie library, we have no reason to write our own. If it's fully compliant with the spec that we agree upon, we can just use that. This way we can promote collaboration even with different runtimes. We use the libraries and we're fine. We move on another task which may be still uncovered by everybody. That's also something.
About cookies, Artem, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit on the discussion about cookies from the WhatWG working group, and what's your idea on how we can proceed on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you can hear me fine. So, hi, folks. My name is Artem. I'm joining this as the first meeting from my side, and I would mainly like to discuss the cookie proposal. I will post it in the chat, which is a proposal to have a standard API to parse cookies. Because we have a really great proposal in Cookie Store right now, but it's concerned more with setting and retrieving cookies, and it still omits the parsing part. So I decided to propose, hey, what if we have a simple API that's synchronous and is responsible for parsing and serializing cookie strings, which seems to be a useful application since there are multiple packages on NPM that, in summary, have millions of downloads. So people do use this, so they do need this. We had a few discussions already, including contributions from Marco, and I believe Marco also wrote a basic implementation already and suggested we can try this out in Undici as a first adopter. But before that, I would perhaps encourage a bit more discussion. So if you have any thoughts or any use cases that pop to your mind, I would be thankful if you share them on GitHub so we can refine this. One thing that I posted recently is that it would be really nice to align this proposed API with experimental cookie store in terms of getting and setting cookies. So they already have some sort of input, shape, types, and whatever. They have some behaviors. And I think that proposed API should inherit those so nobody's confused and everything behaves the same. Ideally, I would like to see this API also reused in cookie store as one of the input values if you want to set or get cookies.
So yeah, thank you very much. I think this proposal aligns perfectly with the values that we want to like make this working group for. So standardization, improving DX on making standards. So I think it's we should at this point on our agenda and see how we can proceed with this. Ideally, like I saw some discussion also in Fastify about cookies, wanting the like needing the standardization. So it could be like for the WebWG process, it needs an incubator. So like ideally, either Node.js or Fastify could be an incubator, and this working group could be the place where to discuss and see how we can improve the and go make the proposal advance. So yeah, I think we should add this to the agenda if everyone agrees, and we can start discussing it under the issue and move on with the whole thing.
That'd be amazing.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead,
Just
Rafa.
we need to finalize the meeting. I couldn't participate because for some reason the Zoom is just freezing the voice. I couldn't speak or hear, so I just stayed in the call because I'm live streaming on YouTube. Um, so I believe we will have another meeting in 2 weeks or in one week, or I believe it's two, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
every other week, yes.
2 weeks, right. So I suggest to John will upload the meeting notes, but also I suggest to create an issue to discuss about the goal, the proposal, like basically all the topics we have discussed today, and then we can kind of split the topics, like we might want to target Fastify maintainers, Express maintainers, Coa, and so on. And on the other side, we tag the TSC as well for the net module, and then we find possibly we will have subgroups of this major group. Anyway, thanks for participating. Hope to see you in 2 weeks. Bye bye.
Yes.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Bye-bye.
folks.
Have a nice day.